It's September 5th, 2023. As a Bethesda fanboy, I am foaming at the mouth for Starfield. Unfortunately, months had passed before I'd actually get to play the game just from, well, life. But my hype died 0% as I was reading no reviews until I got to sit down with it. I did, however, see a couple of headlines that were a bit concerning. At the beginning of 2024, I finally sat down with this game, and for the first hour or so, I was hype. Space travel looked and felt nice, and it was checking the box for that sort of sci-fi, yet old-school futurism vibe, and it still had that Bethesdaism that's hard to quantify. They all feel like older games wearing modern clothes, but in a way it's nice. It's like gaming with your grandparents. I was vibing. After playing that first hour, I saw a few articles that I felt I could read now. I started to notice the large outcropping of hate for this game, and I also noticed the primary source of the hate was from longtime fans. Now, fandom, as a rule, sucks. There is generally no worse source of information on the quality of something new as longtime fans of previous iterations, especially fans that were young for the first entries of their beloved worship pieces who have since grown up. There's nothing like the removal of those rose-colored glasses of early life experience that will make modern equivalents feel hollow and crappy in comparison, because you feel hollow and crappy in comparison. Please like and subscribe for more bummer takes. And hilariously, looking back on it, my plan for the very first video for this channel after seeing this buildup of hate from the old guard of Bethesda was a sort of Starfield is overhated, contrarian style video that tends to do really well in the YouTube sphere. But in order to do that, I had to play the rest of the game. Let's just say I did not make that video. Starfield, I will start by saying, is far from the worst game ever made. We could talk for a while about how the general game design for Bethesda games is super dated, but I'll just refer to Nakey Jakey for that series of talking points. It's already been done about as well as it can be. For me, though, what really felt like a betrayal in this game didn't have anything to do with the sort of Bethesda jank that, at this point, is just a key part of the Bethesda experience. This game has no soul. In past Bethesda games, it felt like the source of the jank was because the scope of everything they were trying to fit into the game was just so ambitious and so vast that it naturally led to some issues with stitching that broad scope together. It felt like someone really gave a shit, really wanted to pack this thing full of fun and just couldn't tie up every loose end, and not only did that excuse the jank, but in a lot of ways it added to the experience. Made it feel human and passionate and fun, and you could really kind of feel that joy of creation along with them. And honestly, they were hilarious. Some of the moments I best remember are mess-ups from the game. The jank in Starfield did not feel passionate. For a game that took 1 billion years to come out, it felt rushed and bored with itself simultaneously. Like, the reason it took so long was because it was just dragging itself off the couch in order to slap something together. It felt like it was made by people who thought as long as there was something to do, no matter how monotonous, the player would do it. All this to say, I was in exactly 0 ways excited for Oblivion Remastered. And yet, somehow, this incredibly faithful remaster of this janky, goofy-ass RPG from 2006 brought me back. As a rule, I don't really like to reminisce. I think it sets a bad precedent to sit around going, remember when stuff was good? In reality, history has rarely been that much better than it is now. We're just getting worse at pretending certain aspects of life are good. I don't like nostalgia, and yet here I am playing Oblivion in 2025. And feeling something that Starfield never gave me. I focus on a lot of inherently negative and scary topics on this channel. I think it's important to talk about it. Even in the video essay community, I see a lot of people who are like, everything is so negative. I just want to focus on the positive. Well, buck the fuck up, Snowflake. Shit's bad. Now, I don't have any problem with positive thinking in the sense of looking for silver linings or treating major negatives as opportunity. Inherently, I think that's a better way to view things than just wallowing in your own misery, but Delulu is not the Solulu. And talking about stuff that isn't fun or chill to talk about is going to be a huge part of any of this ever getting solved, if it ever does. That being said, In this video, I will be focusing on something positive. I'm seeing trends in a certain regard that I really love to see. And primarily where I'm seeing it is in the entertainment sphere, but life imitates art. That's Oscar Wilde, baby, your boy cultured. And art has the potential, through expanding mindsets, to have major real-world impacts. Now, what is the positive trend I'm seeing? It's very simple, and it's a small shift at this time, but it's a focus on an attraction to the flawed and human. AI has been the new it thing for quite a while now. Somehow they crammed AI into my toaster. I hope it doesn't judge me when I stuff 4 toaster strudels in the same slot for efficiency. AI is also further ruining an already oversaturated arts sphere by clogging it with generated crap. But here's the thing. Somehow, with images as high quality as these being generated, we're already getting to the point where people are developing a way to detect it innately. And I'm not talking about some algorithmic method, although those do exist at the time. I'm talking about how in the same way I can literally read the subject line of an email and know that this Nigerian prince might not be legitimate, I've seen several instances where people just look at a particular piece of art and know that it's AI, without the weird hands or legitimately disturbing stuff that you see in some of them. I think it's an effect very closely related to the uncanny valley. There's an ick, grossness to it that people just feel now that they've rolled it around a bit in their head. Now, when it first started to appear, I don't really think the subconscious response had kicked in yet, mostly because it was so obvious that it didn't really feel the need to. It's like looking at an orange doesn't trigger the uncanny valley because it's not a person. But now that it's so close, the ick factor has activated. We feel that prickly feeling that lets us know this was not made by our fellow man. Now, of course, the tech will improve and it'll get harder to tell and people won't know anymore for a bit and then it'll kick back in. Now, I might be wrong in this. Maybe sometime it'll progress past our ability to get it. But it is my sincere belief that we will always arrive at a point, one way or another, where a lot of people can tell the difference and will prefer the human version. In the same way, we're developing a resistance to art not being made by real people. We're also developing major resistance to games that feel like CEOs trying to print money on the backs of the gaming community, that feel sterile and overly commoditized. Shit that feels like nobody had fun making it, or shoehorned elements that feel like the marketing team just trying to check a box. I love to see that. The Elder Scrolls has always been so fun. Not only in the sense of the love of fantasy and role-playing with such deep customization, but also in the sense of just goofiness and human jank. The kind of shit that would only really happen from human intervention, hell, human error in a lot of cases. The bugs and stupidity of these games, Bethesda games as a whole, I'm sure most would agree, are some of the best parts of the experience of these games. And that's what I think is having a major revival right now. People want to consume content that seems like people had fun making it, or at least content that feels like it was deeply cared about. And that's an awesome change. It's becoming cool to try again. It's becoming cool to care. Whether through just relentless media promotion of it or through actual public interest, there was a big surge of just absurdly corporatized crap that's made its way to the forefront of some of the most popular media types. It's hard to say when exactly this started. It's probably been a bit of a slow burn all the way from the 80s, but really ramped up in the 2000s and has been continuously escalating since that point. Video games were actually one of the last media art forms that were over-corporatized to this extent. Now, there were early exceptions like WoW, sports games, Call of Duty past a certain point, but video games were generally very impassioned projects. I think that somewhat comes with the natural barrier to entry with video games, as in the ability to make them. It takes a very special mind to be a programmer and by extension to make video games, and that sort of put the wall up for a good little while. Then, during the early to mid 2010s, the scales really started to tip with the invasion of microtransaction heavy and live service oriented games and mobile gaming income structures, which were bleeding back into standard gaming. And boy, did Bethesda participate in the overcommodification in their own way. Funnily enough, Oblivion was actually kind of a patient zero for microtransactions with the legendary Horse Armor DLC, which adds irony that this remaster feels like a rebellion against that status quo in a way. It's still a head-scratchingly weird decision to this day, and as far as I remember, it did literally nothing in the game outside of dripping hard than a bitch. So that was an all-around dark time for the general trajectory of the gaming universe that's continued up until, in my opinion, right about now, as I think the tables are starting to turn. And finally, I'm going to talk about the Oblivion Remaster. It feels odd saying that preserving the game mechanics of a nearly 2-decade-old game while slapping on a very, very nice coat of paint is ambitious. But it really is. From a game dev standpoint, in many ways what Bethesda and Virtuos did here is actually more difficult to accomplish than simply remaking the game from scratch with modern tools, or at least accomplish well. To cut the nerd speak that I'd love nothing more than to dive into as short as possible, they're essentially taking the output of the original game's engine and rendering it with modern textures, animation, lighting, etc. through Unreal Engine 5. I find it really cool that I'm basically playing the Oblivion that I was imagining with those childhood rose-colored glasses I mentioned earlier. And that's when it hit me. They basically made the Oblivion of my childhood dreams. The reason Oblivion Remastered works so well isn't just because it's faithful, it's because it feels like it remembers you. Not the literal me, but the me that used to run through the Imperial City and steal everything that wasn't nailed down even though a significant amount of it was actually worthless. The me that didn't have to have my guard up about some company trying to wring more money out of me for the full experience. You know what's crazy? Pretty much anybody with a little time and dedication can make a game that looks expensive now. AI tools, procedural generation, prefab assets, whatever. But care? Sincerity? Someone taking the time to decide this tree goes here because it makes the moment a little better. This dialogue needs better pacing for impact. We need a little bit more wall here for a better area reveal. That attention, those moments. You cannot fake that. That's what I liked about this remaster. Somebody cared about the source material enough to preserve it, not because it would exclusively test well. Actually, this exact thing is probably people's main complaint about this remaster. Like, a lot of people hate that they just slapped a new coat of paint on the original game, essentially. They think it's lazy. They didn't do it because it would hit KPIs, although I imagine it probably did, but because they knew what people wanted to feel when they played this. Now, to be fair, Todd Howard's actually talked about some of the backlash from Starfield, said that it was too different from what people expected, and sure, new IPs are hard, I guess, but I don't think the issue was that it was too different. I don't really think anyone thinks that outside of Todd. I think the issue was that it was empty, and not just environmentally, like, well, let's be honest, every Bethesda game. And that's odd, considering the way Howard talked about this game as if it were like his conceptual baby. Apparently, he actually wanted to evoke that feeling of emptiness to give the vibe of space exploration. Well, mission accomplished, I guess. Different is fine. Weird is great. But when you remove soul, charm, humanity, whatever you want to call it, what's left? Motherfucking dominoes. That's what, baby. This remaster solidified my suspicion that the gaming world's tolerance of this corporatization is nearing its end, and that even big companies are recognizing it. And this is far from the only side. COD sales and player counts declining, EA sales declining, Marathon basically getting shot behind the barn for stealing art, and there are a lot more indications than just that. Maybe the
"It's still stupid and now I paid 49 cents for it"
era is almost over, and the champions of putting in the work and loving what they do are finally going to get their flowers over the game mills. Maybe people are starting to crave the weird, broken, and human after being fed so many sterile and flat and safe AAA titles. Maybe, just maybe, it's finally becoming cool to give a shit about more than just money.